I'm Charlotte, 34 years old, and I always believed family loyalty was sacred. For 7 years, I thought my marriage to James was unshakable, and my relationship with my mother-in-law, Patricia, was cordial enough. I ignored the tension, made excuses for the red flags, all to preserve what I thought was family. That dream trip to the Colorado mountains, it turned into my worst nightmare. I never imagined I'd wake up alone in that hotel room with nothing but my pajamas. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from in the comments, and subscribe to hear how I rebuilt my life from absolute zero. I grew up in a small town in Washington state where family connections were scarce for me. My parents divorced when I was young and both remarried people who treated me like an afterthought. I learned early to be self-sufficient to create my own stability. After high school, I put myself through design school by working 2 jobs and graduated with honors in graphic design. By 30, I had built a respectable career from scratch. I worked at a boutique design agency in Seattle, had my own apartment, and for the first time felt truly secure. My life was organized, predictable, and entirely mine. I had a small circle of trusted friends, but kept most people at arm's length. Trust didn't come easily to me after my childhood. Then came James. We met at my college friend's wedding. He was the best man and I was a bridesmaid. James had this easy charm that lit up any room. Tall with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed to be just for me. He remembered every detail of our conversations and texted me the next morning about a book I'd mentioned liking. "You know what impressed me most about you," he told me months later. "How independent you were. Most women I dated needed constant validation, but you stood completely on your own." Our romance was a whirlwind. Within weeks, we were spending every weekend together. Within months, he was practically living at my place. He was attentive, supportive of my career, and seemed to understand me in ways no one else had bothered to try. 10 months after we met, James proposed during a sunset hike. I said yes immediately. The wedding was small but elegant, just close friends and James's family. That was when I first met Patricia, his mother. She hugged me tightly at the reception. "I've always wanted a daughter," she whispered. "James is my whole world, but I'm so happy he found you." At the time, her words seemed sweet. Only later would I understand the possessiveness behind them. The first warning signs appeared during our honeymoon in Hawaii. James called his mother every single day. At first, I found it endearing. A man who loved his mother must be capable of deep love, right? But the calls lasted 45 minutes to an hour, and he'd step away to take them privately. Once I overheard him say, "I know, Mum, but Charlotte wouldn't understand." I wanted so badly to have the stable family life I never had growing up that I filed these moments away instead of confronting them. I convinced myself that this was normal, that I was overreacting due to my own family baggage. After the honeymoon, we settled into what looked like a perfect life in Seattle. We found a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with a view of the water. James worked in financial planning at a local firm, while I continued advancing at my design agency. We had dinner parties, went hiking on weekends, joined a wine club. From the outside, we were the ideal young professional couple. 6 months into our marriage, James suggested we combine our finances. "It makes more sense for tax purposes," he explained. "Plus it shows we're truly committed." I hesitated. My financial independence had always been my security blanket. But wasn't marriage about trust? About becoming truly united? I agreed, and we created joint checking and savings accounts. Around the same time, my career began taking off. I was assigned bigger clients, received glowing performance reviews, and was being groomed for a senior design position. Meanwhile, James seemed stuck at his firm. He'd come home frustrated, complaining about being passed over for opportunities. "They just don't see my potential," he'd say, pouring himself a large whiskey. "Not like you do." I tried to be supportive, offering to help him update his resume or practice for interviews. But he'd brush me off, saying I couldn't understand the complexities of his industry. More and more, he'd end these conversations with, "I'm going to call Mom, she always knows what to say." Patricia became an increasing presence in our marriage. She lived about an hour away, but started dropping by unannounced several times a week. She'd bring groceries, even though I had already shopped, rearrange our kitchen cabinets, while claiming to help clean up or show up with dinner when I had already started cooking. "James mentioned you've been so busy with work," she'd say with a tight smile. "I thought I'd lighten your load." When I tried to establish some boundaries, suggesting we schedule visits instead of having surprise drop-ins, James became defensive. "She's just trying to help Charlotte. Why are you being so cold? She's family." That word, family, always shut down my objections. Family was what I had always wanted, what I had never really had. How could I risk pushing away the family I'd finally found? Still, I couldn't ignore how our dynamic was shifting. James and Patricia had inside jokes I wasn't part of, referenced memories I hadn't shared, and sometimes exchanged glances I couldn't interpret. More than once, I walked into a room to find them suddenly going quiet. I was caught in an internal conflict, wanting to protect my marriage, but also feeling my sense of self-respect eroding. I started keeping a journal documenting incidents that made me uncomfortable, trying to figure out if I was being paranoid or picking up on something real. Looking back at those entries now, the pattern is so clear. But when you're in it, when you're trying so hard to make something work, you can rationalize almost anything. Patricia had mastered the art of the subtle put-down. Nothing overtly cruel, always wrapped in a veneer of concern or helpfulness. When I cooked dinner, she'd say, "Oh, that's an interesting way to make that dish. I usually add more seasoning, but I suppose this is fine for a weeknight." If I wore something new, she'd tilt her head and ask, "Is that what professional women are wearing these days? How brave of you." Up to her own. Then she'd turn to James and say, "Remember that lovely blue shirt I got you? Why don't you wear that anymore?" At first I tried to win her approval. I asked for her recipes, invited her to lunch, even sought her advice on decorating our apartment. But no matter what I did, her response always made me feel inadequate. The gaslighting became more blatant over time. Once I brought an expensive bottle of wine to Sunday dinner at her house. Patricia thanked me, took it to the kitchen, and later served a completely different wine with dinner. When I asked about it, she looked confused. "What other bottle? You didn't bring wine today, Charlotte. You mentioned you might, but you arrived empty-handed. Didn't she, James?" James nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, I think you talked about bringing that Cabernet, but we forgot to pick it up. I was certain I had brought the wine. I remembered unwrapping it from the gift bag in her kitchen. But they were both so convincing that I started doubting my own memory. Things escalated when I discovered Patricia borrowing my personal items without asking. My designer handbag that disappeared for a week and returned with a stain inside. My grandmother's vintage scarf that I found wadded up in Patricia's coat pocket. My limited edition perfume that was suddenly half empty. When confronted, Patricia would act hurt. I thought we were family, Charlotte. Family shares. But if you need to keep score of every little thing... The worst incident came during Thanksgiving dinner 3 years into my marriage. Patricia had insisted on hosting the extended family, James's cousins, aunts and uncles. 20 people crowded around her dining room table. I had offered to bring several dishes, but Patricia declined, saying she wanted everything to be perfect. During the meal, James's aunt complimented my earrings, asking where I got them. Before I could answer, Patricia said, Charlotte has quite expensive taste. Those probably cost more than some people's monthly grocery budget." She laughed lightly. "But I suppose when you're focused on your career, these little indulgences are important." James's uncle asked what I did for a living, and I started explaining my recent promotion to senior design director. Patricia interrupted. "Charlotte's very ambitious. Sometimes I worry she doesn't have time for creating a real home." She patted James's hand. "My poor son often has to fend for himself for dinner, don't you dare." "Mum," James said weakly, but he was smiling. I excused myself to the bathroom, fighting tears. Through the thin wall, I heard Patricia speaking to James in the hallway. "I just don't understand what you saw in her, sweetheart. You could have done so much better. Remember Amanda from the country club? She got divorced last year, and she was always so fond of you." I expected hope James would defend me. Instead, he sighed and said, "I know, Mom, things are complicated right now." When I confronted him later that night, James accused me of eavesdropping and taking his mother's comments out of context. "She doesn't mean anything by it," he insisted. "That's just how she expresses concern. You're too sensitive, Charlotte. Not everyone communicates like you do." After that Thanksgiving, I found myself increasingly isolated. James spent more and more time with his mother, helping her with house projects, attending community events, with her having mother-son dinners. That somehow always fell on evenings when I had important work deadlines. When I received my promotion at work, I was thrilled. The position came with a significant salary increase and more creative control. I planned a special dinner to celebrate buying James's favourite foods and an expensive bottle of champagne. He came home late that night, already having had drinks with colleagues. When I showed him the promotion letter with the salary details, his expression darkened. "That's more than I make," he said flatly. "We're a team." I responded, trying to salvage the moment. "This is good for both of us." He pushed away from the table. I need to process this. I'm going to Mom's. He didn't come back until the following afternoon. Patricia called while he was gone. James is very upset, she said. Men have fragile egos, Charlotte. A wise woman knows when to shine and when to step back. My generation understood this better, I think. The isolation grew worse. James vetoed weekend trips with my friends, claiming we couldn't afford them despite my increased salary. He questioned why I needed to attend industry networking events in the evenings. When I stayed late at work, he'd call repeatedly, then be cold and distant when I got home. I began confiding in my best friend Maya. We'd been close since college, but our contact had become less frequent after my marriage. When we finally had lunch after months apart, she was visibly concerned. "Charlotte, this doesn't sound healthy," she said after I described a recent argument with James and Patricia. "They're isolating you and undermining your confidence. These are classic manipulation tactics." I defended them reflexively, even as part of me recognized the truth in her words. "It's not that bad. They're family. We're just adjusting to my new work schedule." Maya took my hand. "The Charlotte I know wouldn't let anyone treat her this way. What's really going on?" I couldn't answer her then. The truth was too frightening to admit that I'd given away pieces of my independence so gradually that I barely recognized my life anymore, that I was afraid of what would happen if I truly confronted the situation. Instead, I told Maya I would try one more approach. Patricia had recently proposed a family trip to Colorado to celebrate James's birthday. Maybe away from our usual environment in the neutral territory of a vacation, we could reset our relationships. Maybe I could finally connect with Patricia and strengthen my marriage. I didn't know then that this desperate attempt to save my family would become the catalyst for destroying it and ultimately rebuilding my life entirely on my own terms. The trip to Colorado was Patricia's idea. She called one evening while James and I were having dinner, and he immediately put her on speakerphone. "I've been thinking," she announced, "we should do something special for James's 35th birthday. A family trip to that mountain resort in Colorado. You've always wanted to visit, sweetheart." James's face lit up in a way I rarely saw anymore when we were alone together. "That sounds amazing, Mum," he said. "Doesn't it, Charlotte?" Though I felt ambivalent, I nodded and forced enthusiasm into my voice. "It could be really nice." Patricia spent the next 20 minutes detailing her vision for the trip: luxury accommodations, hiking spa treatments, gourmet restaurants. She had already researched options and pre-selected dates 3 weeks away. "I'll handle the reservations," she said. "Charlotte, you just need to request time off work. I had a major project deadline that week, but didn't mention it." This trip represented a last chance to repair our family dynamic. I'd make it work. In the days leading up to the trip, Patricia and James created a shared document with packing suggestions that struck me as odd. "Bring all your jewelry," Patricia wrote. "There are several formal restaurants that require proper attire." When I mentioned that I usually travelled with minimal jewellery for security reasons, James became irritated. "Mum went to a lot of trouble planning this. Can't you just do what she asks for once?" Even stranger was James's insistence that I bring my laptop and portable tablet. "But you always complain when I work during personal time," I said, confused. "This is different," he explained. "The resort has spotty cell service. If work emergencies come up, you'll need your equipment. Better safe than sorry." A week before departure, James asked for our marriage certificate and insurance documents. "The resort needs them for registration and activity waivers," he explained when I questioned this unusual request. "That seems excessive for a hotel booking," I said. James sighed dramatically. "This is a high-end resort with strict liability policies. Do you want to spend the first day dealing with paperwork instead of enjoying ourselves?" I reluctantly gathered the documents, adding them to our growing pile of luggage. The day before our departure, I called Maya. "Something feels off about this trip," I admitted. "Trust your instincts," she urged. "Maybe take photos of all your important documents and email them to yourself just in case." I followed her advice and also tucked an emergency credit card into the inner pocket of my pajamas, a habit from my less financially secure days that I'd never quite abandoned. We left early on a Friday morning, Patricia arriving at 6 a.m. in her luxury SUV. James had insisted we all drive together rather than taking separate vehicles. "It's more environmentally friendly," he claimed, though Patricia's SUV was hardly fuel efficient. The atmosphere during the 8-hour drive was tense. Patricia sat in the front passenger seat beside James, controlling the music and navigation. I was relegated to the back seat like a child. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, filled with inside jokes and references I didn't understand. Whenever I tried to join the conversation, Patricia would respond briefly, then pivot back to a topic that excluded me. James never noticed or pretended not to notice this dynamic. At one point, Patricia turned to check something in her bag and caught me watching them. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's so nice to have uninterrupted time with my two favourite people," she said. "Though I've hardly had a moment alone with James since you got that big promotion, Charlotte." The undercurrent of accusation was clear, but I forced a smile and changed the subject. We arrived at the resort in the late afternoon. The property was stunning, a sprawling alpine lodge with panoramic mountain views surrounded by aspen trees beginning to show their fall colours. Under different circumstances, I would have been thrilled to explore the grounds. As James checked us in, I noticed Patricia whispering something to him. He nodded slightly. When I asked what they were discussing, Patricia smiled brightly. "Just reminding him to request extra towels. I know how you like your long showers." Our suite was luxurious, a spacious living area with a fireplace, a bedroom with a king-sized bed and a balcony overlooking the mountains. Patricia's connecting room was next door with a shared door between the suites mates that remained conspicuously unlocked. While I unpacked, I noticed Patricia enter our room several times to borrow items or ask questions. Each time she seemed to be surveying what I had brought. When she spotted my jewellery case, she commented on how substantial my collection was. Dinner that first evening was uncomfortable. We ate at the resort's upscale restaurant, Patricia insisting I wear my most valuable jewellery, the diamond earrings James had given me for our 5th anniversary, and my grandmother's sapphire necklace. Throughout the meal, Patricia made pointed comments about my spending habits. "Those designer shoes must have cost a fortune," she remarked loudly enough for neighbouring tables to hear. "It's so important to look successful, isn't it?" James said, nothing focused intently on his steak. When the check came, James insisted on paying with our joint credit card, despite Patricia's offer to cover dinner. I noticed him signing the receipt with an unusually large tip. Back in the room, I discovered my wallet wasn't where I'd left it in my purse. After searching frantically, I found it in the bathroom, all cards present but reorganised. When I mentioned this to James, he dismissed my concern. "You probably moved it yourself when you were getting ready. You've been forgetful lately." Before bed, James suggested we have a nightcap to really get into vacation mode. He brought me a surprisingly strong whiskey sour from the suite's minibar. "Drink up," he encouraged. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day." I rarely drank hard liquor, but didn't want to seem difficult. The drink tasted oddly bitter, but I attributed it to the premium brands the resort would use. Within 30 minutes, I felt dizzy and disoriented, far more affected than one drink should cause. James helped me to bed, his movements efficient, rather than tender. "You're such a lightweight," he said, but his usual teasing tone was missing. As I drifted off the room spinning, I thought I heard the door between our suite and Patricia's open. Through heavy eyelids, I glimpsed James and Patricia standing in the doorway whispering. I tried to call out, but couldn't form the words before darkness claimed me. I woke briefly in the middle of the night, my mouth dry and head pounding. Through blurred vision, I saw James and Patricia huddled at the desk, papers spread out before them. My grandmother's jewellery box was open, contents glittering under the desk lamp. Before I could process what I was seeing, unconsciousness pulled me back under. It was the last time I would see either of them or my possessions for months. The morning sunlight streaming through the unclosed curtains finally woke me. My head throbbed with what felt like the worst hangover of my life, my mouth cotton dry. I reached for James, but found his side of the bed empty and cold. "James," I called out, my voice raspy. No answer. I forced myself to sit up, fighting a wave of nausea. The room spun briefly before settling into focus. 10:37, the bedside clock read. I never slept this late. "Patricia," I tried again. "Is anyone here?" The suite remained silent, except for the distant hum of the air conditioning. Maybe they went to breakfast, I thought, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. It wasn't there. Frowning, I checked the other nightstand, then under the pillows. No phone. A creeping uneasiness began to replace my grogginess. I slid out of bed, still wearing the silk pajamas I'd changed into last night, and padded to the bathroom. My toiletry bag was gone from the counter. So was James's electric razor and Patricia's makeup case. The closet door stood partially open. I rushed over and pulled it wide. Empty. No suitcases, no clothes, not my dresses or James's suits or the hiking gear we'd packed. My heart began to race as I moved frantically around the suite, checking every potential hiding place. The desk where I'd left my laptop bare, except for the hotel stationery. The safe where I'd stored my grandmother's sapphire necklace and diamond earrings open and vacant. My purse containing my wallet, phone charger, and sunglasses vanished. Everything was gone. Every possession I had brought on this trip had disappeared. "This isn't happening," I whispered, fighting rising panic. "This can't be happening." I ran to the door connecting our suite to Patricia's room and flung it open. Her room was immaculate bed, made no sign anyone had stayed there. On the desk sat a single room key card. The full weight of the situation crashed over me. They were gone. They had taken everything: my clothes, my jewelry, my electronics, my identification, my credit cards, my cash. I stood frozen, trying to process the impossibility of it. My own husband and his mother had drugged me and robbed me. The realization was so monstrous, my brain initially rejected it, searching for alternative explanations. They had to be playing some kind of sick joke. Or there had been an emergency and they'd packed in a hurry somehow, forgetting all my belongings. Or the room had been burglarized while we all slept, and they were at the police station right now reporting the crime. But deep down I knew. The careful planning, the strange requests to bring valuables and documents, the whispered conversations, the drugged drink, it had all been leading to this moment. I grabbed the hotel room phone and dialed the front desk, hands shaking. "Front desk, how may I assist you?" a professional voice answered. "This is Charlotte Williams in Suite 410. My husband and his mother are missing, and so are all of my belongings. I think I need security, the police, someone to help me." A pause. "Ms. Williams, let me check something. Please hold." The minute on hold felt like an eternity. Finally, the voice returned, notably cooler. "Ms. Williams, our records show your suite was booked for one night only with checkout scheduled for 11 a.m. today. That's in 23 minutes. Your husband, Mr. Williams, informed us last night that you would be checking out on time." "One night," I echoed. "No, that's impossible. We booked for a full week. It's a family vacation." "I'm afraid not. We have the reservation clearly documented for one night only." My grip tightened on the phone. "Listen to me. I have been robbed. My husband and his mother have taken all my possessions. I have no clothes except what I'm wearing, no wallet, no phone, no identification. I need help." Another uncomfortable pause. "I'll send up the manager, Ms. Williams." 20 minutes later, I sat in the living area of the suite, still in my pajamas, facing Bradley Tucker, the resort's poker-faced manager, and a female security officer named Dana. "Let me understand correctly," Bradley said, his tone suggesting he didn't believe a word I was saying. "You claim your husband and mother-in-law brought you here, drugged you, and stole all your belongings while you were unconscious." "I know how it sounds," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But yes, that's exactly what happened." Bradley exchanged a look with Dana that clearly communicated his skepticism. "And you have no identification, no credit card, nothing to verify who you are or your ability to pay for any additional nights." "That's what I've been trying to tell you. They took everything. Miss, if that is indeed your name, we have fraud attempts at this resort more frequently than you might imagine. People trying to secure luxury accommodations without paying. I'm not trying to commit fraud." My composure began to crack. "Call the police. Report the theft. Check the security cameras, you'll see them leaving with my things." Bradley sighed. "Our security footage is only reviewed in the event of a confirmed crime and without a police report." "Then let me file a police report." "You're welcome to do so, but without identification, it will be difficult for the authorities to process your claim. And regardless of your situation, I'm afraid we'll need this room cleared by noon for our incoming guests." "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, desperation rising. "I have nothing. No clothes, no money, no way to even get home." "That's not the resort's responsibility," Bradley replied, though he had the decency to look uncomfortable. "However, I can connect you with local community assistance if you're truly in distress." I closed my eyes briefly, trying to think through the fog still clouding my mind from whatever drug they had given me. "Can I at least use your business center to check my email? Maybe I can contact someone who can help me." Bradley nodded reluctantly. "Dana will escort you once you've made yourself presentable." After they left, I used the hotel phone to call our bank. After answering security questions to verify my identity, The customer service representative delivered another shock. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams, but your joint checking and savings accounts were emptied via wire transfer yesterday afternoon. The available balance in both accounts is zero." "Zero," I repeated numbly. "That's impossible. My direct deposit from work went in 2 days ago. There should be thousands of dollars." "According to our records, a wire transfer was initiated for the full balance. It appears to have been authorized with your account credentials." "I didn't authorize any wire transfer." My voice rose in panic. "I understand your concern, but the transfer used all proper authentication methods. If you believe this was fraudulent, you'll need to file a police report and submit a formal fraud claim, which takes 5 to 7 business days to investigate." After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. James hadn't just taken the cash and valuables I'd brought on the trip. He'd cleared out our accounts before we'd even left Seattle. This wasn't an impulsive act, it was meticulously planned. I flashed back to his recent behavior, his sudden interest in our insurance policies, his questions about my grandmother's inheritance, his insistence that I bring my laptop and jewelry on the trip. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. When Dana returned to escort me to the business center, I was still in my pajamas. "I have nothing else to wear," I explained, humiliation burning my cheeks. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Wait here." She returned 10 minutes later with a t-shirt, sweatpants, and flip-flops from the resort's lost and found. None of it fit properly, but it was better than wandering the resort in sleepwear. In the business center, I logged into my email, hands trembling as I typed. There were dozens of unread messages, but my attention was caught by several notifications from our credit card companies confirming large purchases and cash advances. James had maxed out our joint credit cards as well. As I scrolled further, I found an email that made my blood run cold. It was from our landlord, confirming that we would be vacating our apartment at the end of the month. Apparently James had given notice weeks ago without telling me. Most devastating was an email exchange I discovered when I checked my sent folder. Messages I had never written had been sent from my account to my boss, explaining that I was dealing with a family emergency and needed to take an indefinite leave of absence effective immediately. James had accessed my email account and impersonated me. I was jobless, homeless, and penniless in a luxury resort 2 states away from home with no transportation and no identification. I called the only person I knew would help without question. "Maya, it's Charlotte. I need help. They've taken everything." Maya's shock quickly transformed into decisive action. "First things first, you need a place to stay tonight. I'm going to transfer money to the hotel for another night while we figure this out." "Maya, it's too much." I started to protest. "Stop. This is what friends are for. I'm also booking a flight to Denver first thing tomorrow. It's a 12-hour drive from Seattle, but I'll be there by tomorrow afternoon. Can you hold on until then?" Her confidence steadied me. "Yes, thank you." After hanging up, I approached the front desk again, this time with Bradley conspicuously absent. A younger staff member named Eliza was on duty. "My friend is arranging payment for another night," I explained. "She'll call in the next few minutes with her credit card information." Eliza nodded sympathetically. "Of course, I'll help with that." She lowered her voice. "And between us, I've put together a few things that might help." She slid a small bag across the counter. Inside, I found basic toiletries, a protein bar, a bottle of water, and a hotel notepad with her number written on it. "If you need anything, call the desk and ask for me," she said. "And the kitchen sent this up for you." She produced a covered plate with a sandwich and fruit. I fought back tears at this simple kindness. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." Back in my room, I ate slowly, trying to settle my churning stomach and organize my thoughts. The shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by a cold, clarifying anger. I took the hotel notepad and began documenting everything I could remember when the planning for the trip started. Specific comments James and Patricia had made the timeline of the previous night. Despite the drug they'd given me, snippets of memory were returning James and Patricia at the desk with my jewelry box, the sound of suitcases being wheeled quietly across carpet, Patricia's whisper, "She'll never recover from this." They had underestimated me. They thought stealing my possessions meant stealing my power. They were wrong. That night, lying in the same bed where I'd been drugged, I cycled through waves of emotion shock, giving way to grief, hardening into rage, focusing into resolve. I would not be their victim. I would rebuild, and I would make them face consequences. Around midnight, I remembered the emergency credit card I kept sewn into my pajama pocket. a habit from my less secure days that James had always mocked. With trembling fingers, I felt along the inner seam of my pajama pants and nearly sobbed with relief when I found the small plastic card still there. It had a low limit, but it was something they hadn't taken from me. At dawn, unable to sleep, I returned to the business centre. With my emergency card, I ordered the cheapest available replacement phone with overnight shipping to the hotel. Then I began a more thorough investigation of my email. In the trash folder, I discovered deleted emails between James and Patricia dating back months. They had discussed their plan openly, never imagining I would see these messages. Everything is proceeding as planned. Patricia had written 3 weeks before our trip. The property in Arizona is ready. Once we secure C's assets, we can make the final transfer and be settled within days. James's reply was equally calculating. She suspects nothing. Her inheritance from her grandmother came through last week, perfect timing. With that, and her retirement account, we'll be set for years. The betrayal was even more profound than I'd initially understood. This wasn't just theft. It was the systematic dismantling of my entire life, planned meticulously over months. I forwarded these emails to a new account I created then, to Maya documenting the evidence. Then I started researching my options. I learned about identity theft protection services, the process for reporting fraud to credit bureaus, and how to file police reports in multiple jurisdictions. Using the hotel's printer, I created a detailed timeline and checklist of actions I needed to take. The analytical skills that had made me successful in my design career now focused on a different kind of project reclaiming my life. By noon, I had called the 3 major credit bureaus to place fraud alerts on my accounts and reported my stolen credit cards. I couldn't close our joint accounts without James's signature, but I could prevent new lines of credit from being opened in my name. I also discovered through social media alerts I hadn't yet disabled that James and Patricia had already left the country. James's college friend had tagged him in a post, "Great running into you and your mom in Cancun, living the dream, man." They weren't even trying to hide. Through the hotel's phone, I called my design agency and asked to speak to my boss, Sandra. I explained that I had not sent the emails about taking leave and that I was the victim of identity theft and fraud. "I wondered if something was off," Sandra said after I finished my explanation. "Those emails didn't sound like you at all. Too many exclamation points." Despite everything, I laughed. "Dead giveaway. Charlotte, I can't imagine what you're going through, but your job is secure. Take whatever time you need to sort this out and we'll adjust your projects accordingly." And actually, I said, surprising myself, "I'd like to work. I have literally nothing else right now. Not even clothes, but I have my brain and my skills. If there's anything I can do remotely..." We have that pharmaceutical rebrand that just came in. The concepts aren't due for 2 weeks. Think you could handle that from wherever you are? Absolutely. And Sandra, could you possibly advance me part of my next paycheck? I'll need it to get back on my feet. Consider it done. I'll have HR process it today. When Maya arrived at 3 the next afternoon, I was already working on design concepts using the business center computer, dressed in the same borrowed clothes, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She hugged me fiercely, then held me at arm's length to examine me. "You look terrible and amazing at the same time." "That feels exactly right," I said with the first genuine smile in days. Maya had brought a suitcase of clothes, a spare phone charger, and a rental car. "Let's get you out of this place," she said. "I've booked us into a reasonable hotel in Denver for tonight, and tomorrow we start the drive back to Seattle." As we left the resort, Eliza was working the front desk again. I stopped to thank her. "You showed me kindness when I desperately needed it," I told her. "I won't forget that," she smiled. "Just promise me one thing when you take them down, and I know you will send me a postcard." In the rental car, Maya asked, "So what's the game plan?" I opened my notebook where I'd outlined my strategy. First we gather evidence, then we build a case, and finally we make them regret ever thinking I was someone they could discard. The drive back to Seattle with Maya took 2 long days, giving us plenty of time to develop our strategy. I oscillated between moments of focused determination and overwhelming grief. Maya listened without judgment, offering both practical advice and emotional support. What keeps hitting me, I confessed somewhere in the middle of Wyoming, is that James didn't just steal my money and possessions. He stole my history, my identity, my sense of safety. How do you rebuild from that? "One step at a time," Maya answered, "and you don't do it alone." By the time we reached Seattle, I had a comprehensive action plan. My first stop would be the corporate offices of my design firm, where my boss Sandra had agreed to meet me, despite it being Saturday. "This is beyond outrageous," she said, after hearing my full story. "The company's legal team is at your disposal. We take care of our own." I hadn't expected this level of support and had to fight back tears. "Thank you. I was afraid I'd lose my job over this mess." "Are you kidding? You're one of our most valuable designers. Plus, you're working through a crisis that would have most people curled up in a ball. That's the kind of person we want on our team." The company provided a letter confirming my employment and identity, which proved invaluable for the next step, filing comprehensive police reports in both Colorado and Washington. The Seattle police officer who took my report looked skeptical until I presented the emails between James and Patricia. "This is one of the most calculated cases of financial abuse I've seen," he admitted. "Usually these situations are messier. Your husband and mother-in-law clearly planned this for months." "Will you be able to arrest them?" I asked. He sighed. "It's complicated since they've left the country, but we can file charges and work with federal agencies. The good news is that this level of premeditation and the interstate nature of the crime elevates it significantly." Maya had insisted I stay with her rather than getting a hotel, so our next stop was my apartment, or what had been my apartment. As expected, the locks had been changed. The building manager was initially hesitant to let me in, but relented when I showed him my police report and employment verification. "I'll need a locksmith," I told him, "and a police escort would be helpful just to document what's missing." 3 hours later, I stood in the doorway of the apartment I'd shared with James for 5 years. The space was barely recognizable. Most of the furniture was gone, the sectional sofa we'd saved for months to buy the dining set that had been my first major adult purchase, the artwork I'd carefully collected over years. The officer accompanying me whistled softly. "They didn't leave much, did they?" "No," I agreed, stepping further inside. "But let's document everything that's missing." Room by room, I catalogued the theft. All of James's possessions were gone, of course. But so were items that were indisputably mine. My design books, my winter clothes, my grandmother's antique writing desk, the painting I'd received as a graduation gift from my mentor. The kitchen had been stripped of everything valuable, the espresso machine I'd bought myself for Christmas, the high-end knife set, even the copper cookware I'd inherited from my grandmother. My home office was completely bare, no computer, no drawing tablet, no portfolio cases containing years of work. The filing cabinet where I kept important documents stood open and empty. The bedroom revealed the most personal violations. My jewelry box was gone, along with every piece inside it, including items with profound sentimental value, my mother's pearl earrings, my grandfather's pocket watch, the charm bracelet I'd been adding to since childhood. Even my clothes had been picked through all designer items and winter coats, missing, leaving behind only the most basic pieces. "They were thorough," the officer noted, photographing the half-empty closet. "Yes," I agreed, a strange calm settling over me. "They wanted to erase me completely." As we continued our inventory, I noticed something odd about the smoke detector in the bedroom. Stepping closer, I realized it wasn't quite right. The plastic looked cheaper than I remembered, and a tiny red light blinked on the side. "That's not a smoke detector," the officer said, following my gaze. "That's a camera." Further inspection revealed hidden cameras in every room of the apartment, in the living room bookshelf, disguised as a wall clock in the kitchen, even one in the bathroom vent. "They've been watching me," I whispered, the violation hitting me in waves. "For how long?" "Based on the dust patterns, these weren't installed recently," the officer observed. "I'd guess months at minimum." The discovery of the cameras shifted the case dramatically. What had been documented as grand theft was now also invasion of privacy and potentially illegal surveillance. The officer called for a tech crime specialist to properly document and collect the devices. While waiting, I called the forensic accountant Maya had found for me, Michael Reeves, who specialized in cases of financial abuse. "I can come first thing Monday," he offered after hearing my situation. "In the meantime, gather every financial document you can find, bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts. If your husband took the physical copies, request digital versions from the institutions directly." Monday morning, Michael arrived at Maya's apartment where I was staying. Distinguished and precise, he quickly organized the financial information I'd managed to collect. "Your husband's been planning this for approximately 8 months, he concluded after several hours of analysis. That's when the pattern of unusual transfers began. Small amounts at first, then larger as he gained confidence you wouldn't notice. I trusted him completely with our finances," I admitted. He handled all the bill payments, tax filings, everything. Michael nodded without judgment. That's common in these cases. The perpetrator creates a system where the victim becomes gradually disconnected from their own financial picture. He pointed to a spreadsheet he'd created. He diverted nearly $300,000 over time, including your recent inheritance and retirement savings. The number stunned me. Can we recover any of it? Some potentially. The recent transfers will be easier to challenge as fraudulent, especially with the police reports you've filed. The older transactions will be more difficult, but not impossible, given the clear pattern of deception. That afternoon, I met with Diana Chen, an attorney specializing in complex divorce and financial fraud cases. Maya's brother was a law partner at her firm and had called her personally. Diana didn't mince words. This is one of the most egregious cases of marital financial abuse I've seen, and I've seen plenty. The good news is that the evidence is overwhelming and your husband's actions are so extreme that judges tend to have little sympathy. What about Patricia? She was clearly involved. We'll name her as a co-conspirator in both the civil and criminal complaints. The emails between them are particularly damning. She outlined a multi-pronged approach, an emergency divorce filing with financial restraining orders, coordination with the prosecutor's office on criminal charges and civil lawsuits against both James and Patricia for theft and fraud. They've fled to Mexico, but that doesn't mean they're beyond reach, she assured me. International financial crimes trigger federal jurisdiction. Once we file the appropriate paperwork, their passports can be flagged. The next day, working from Maya's dining table that had become my command center, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Searching through archived emails, I found correspondence between James and his previous girlfriend from before we met. Reading between the lines, it appeared she too had experienced a sudden financial crisis that ended their relationship. I immediately forwarded the emails to Diana. This suggests a pattern, she responded quickly. If we can locate her, and she's willing to provide testimony about similar behavior, it strengthens our case dramatically. Through social media, I managed to find James's ex, Alison Parker, now living in Portland. When I reached out, explaining my situation, her response was immediate and emotional. I always wondered if I was crazy, she wrote. James and his mother did something similar to me, not as extreme, but they borrowed money, jewelry, and expensive electronics that were never returned. When I demanded repayment, they spread rumors that I was mentally unstable. I lost friends, almost lost my job. I've been rebuilding for years. With Alison's permission, I connected her with Diana. Her testimony would prove invaluable in establishing a pattern of behavior. By the end of the second week, my counterattack was fully mobilized. Diana had secured emergency orders, freezing any remaining assets James hadn't managed to hide. Michael had documented over 30 fraudulent transactions and filed formal disputes with banks and credit card companies. The police investigation had expanded to include the hidden cameras, upgrading the case to felony status. Most satisfyingly, I discovered through careful monitoring of online marketplaces that James and Patricia were attempting to sell my grandmother's antique writing desk through a high-end consignment shop in Arizona. I immediately notified the detective assigned to my case. Perfect timing, so he told me. We just received authorization to seize assets connected to the fraud. I'll contact the Arizona authorities today. That desk, the single physical item I had left from my grandmother, became the first piece of my former life recovered. It also created the paper trail that eventually led investigators to the Arizona property Patricia had purchased using my stolen funds. 3 weeks after being abandoned in Colorado, I stood in my new apartment, a small but secure one-bedroom I'd found close to Maya's place. The recovered writing desk was the only piece of furniture I owned. My laptop was balanced on top of it, open to a video call with Diana. "We've got them," she announced, unable to contain her satisfaction. "The federal arrest warrants have been issued. Mexican authorities have been notified. It's only a matter of time now." I ran my hand over my grandmother's desk, feeling the smooth wood under my fingertips. "They thought they were taking everything from me," I said quietly. "But they didn't take what matters most, my skills, my determination, my true friends. They didn't take me." Diana smiled. "Exactly. And that's why they've already lost." 6 months after waking up alone in that Colorado hotel room, I sat in my new apartment significantly different from the one I'd shared with James. It was smaller, but entirely mine, filled with furniture I'd chosen carefully quality pieces I'd saved for, rather than the expensive showpieces James had insisted upon. The morning light streamed through windows I'd purposely left unobscured. I'd had enough of hidden things in my life. My coffee steamed beside my laptop as I reviewed emails from Diana. The legal victories had accumulated steadily. James and Patricia had been arrested in Puerto Vallarta 3 months after their escape, attempting to board a yacht they'd purchased with my stolen funds. The international nature of their crimes had escalated the case to federal prosecution, with charges including wire fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and illegal surveillance. Through Diana's relentless efforts, I'd recovered approximately 60% of my stolen assets. Some things were gone forever, sold quickly in the days after the Colorado hotel, the money already laundered through multiple accounts. But the largest portions, my inheritance and retirement savings, had been frozen before they could be fully dispersed. The recovery process had been painstaking. Each bank required different documentation, each credit card company had their own fraud reporting procedures, each insurance claim needed precise evidence. I'd developed a meticulous system for tracking every phone call, email, and submission. My recovered desk had become a symbol of my resilience. I'd refinished it myself, stripping away years of wax and polish to reveal the beautiful raw wood beneath, then sealing it with a clear finish that highlighted its natural grain. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Beyond the material and financial recovery, I'd rebuilt my life in more profound ways. I'd accepted Sandra's offer to become creative director at the design agency, a position I might have hesitated to pursue before. The confidence I'd gained through navigating this crisis had translated to my professional life in unexpected ways. "You have an authority now that commands immediate respect," Sandra had observed during my performance review. "Clients sense it the moment you begin presenting." My social circle had transformed as well. Some friends had drifted away uncomfortable with the messy reality of what had happened to me. Others, like Maya, had shown me what true friendship looked like. And I'd formed new connections through support groups for survivors of financial abuse, finding unexpected solidarity and wisdom. Most meaningfully, I'd launched a side project, combining my design skills with my hard-won knowledge, a visual guide to financial independence specifically designed for women leaving controlling relationships. What began as a personal healing exercise had evolved into a resource being distributed by domestic violence shelters across 3 states. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Diana. "Charlotte, I just received word from the prosecutor. James has accepted a plea deal. 10 years with possibility of parole after 7 full restitution and a permanent restraining order against contacting you in any form." I took a deep breath, letting the news settle. "And Patricia, she's fighting it, claiming she was manipulated by James. The prosecutor isn't buying it, especially with Allison's testimony about the pattern. Trial starts next month, and they're confident of a conviction. Thank you, Diana, for everything." After we hung up, I stood and walked to the window looking out at the Seattle skyline. The anger that had fueled me for months was still there, but transformed into something more constructive. I no longer woke up gasping from nightmares of being trapped and powerless. I no longer flinched when receiving unexpected emails or phone calls. My therapist, Dr. Lakshmi, had helped me understand that recovery wasn't about erasing what had happened, but about integrating it into my life narrative in a way that acknowledged both the trauma and my response to it. "You didn't just survive," she'd told me during our session yesterday. "You've demonstrated remarkable post-traumatic growth. You've built something new and meaningful from the wreckage." My phone chimed with a text from Maya. "Dinner tonight to celebrate the news. The whole gang wants to toast you." The gang was our Thursday night support circle, Maya, 2 women from my financial abuse support group, my colleague from work who'd become a close friend, and Dr. Lakshmi, who sometimes joined us socially now that I was no longer officially her patient. "Absolutely," I replied. "My place at 7. I'm cooking." I had discovered during my rebuilding process that I actually loved cooking when it wasn't being critically evaluated by Patricia. My small kitchen had become a place of creativity and nourishment rather than anxiety. As I began preparing the shopping list for dinner, my email pinged with a new client project, a major rebrand for a women's financial literacy organization. The synchronicity made me smile. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined finding purpose in my pain, yet here it was. The final piece of my recovery had been the hardest learning to trust again, not naively as I once had, but with healthy boundaries and clear eyes. I'd learned to recognize red flags, but also to recognize genuine kindness. I'd learned that vulnerability doesn't have to mean weakness. Most importantly, I'd discovered my own resilience not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality. When everything external was stripped away, I had found an inner strength that couldn't be stolen. As I closed my laptop and headed to the grocery store for dinner ingredients, I passed the framed quote I'd hung by my door, words I'd written during one of my darkest nights in Maya's guest room. They took everything I owned, but nothing that I am. That truth had become the foundation of my rebuilt life. It wasn't the life I had planned or expected, but it was authentically mine, hard-won, and deeply valued. And no one could ever take that away again. If you've ever faced betrayal or had to rebuild from zero, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. What gave you strength during your darkest moments? Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that surviving loss can lead to unexpected strength. Thank you for being here with me today.